Yeah, my name's Kate Raworth. I talk about donut economics a lot, and I'm passionate about the rewriting of economics to make it fit for the 21st century. When economists write papers or textbooks about economics, they often think that the main ideas are conveyed in equations or in the paragraphs. And what they don't realize is actually the real image communication is going on in the pictures, because half of the nerve fibers in our brain are attached to our sight. So we should pay huge attention to the pictures that we see, that we teach, that we learn, and that we draw, because they slip into our minds and wordlessly tell us the deepest assumptions of economic theory, like what the economy is and what's in it and what's out of it and who we are and how it works. So I'm passionate about realizing that if we're going to write a new economic story that's fit for the 21st century, we've got very little chance of doing that if we use last century's pictures. We have to redraw the pictures if we want to tell a new story. Go back to the roots of the word. Economics means household management. We should have a 21st century economics education that actually enables us to manage this extraordinary living household and in the interest of all its inhabitants. So that economic education should start with understanding the planet, with ecology, with understanding that we live within planetary boundaries, that we depend upon the cycles of the living earth. Certainly in my education, and I believe in most students' education, that's just completely absent. You want to talk about the environment? That comes up under environmental externalities. Well, if you're going to talk about the living world as an externality, you've already told me how important it isn't. So we need to completely transform the starting point of economics and recognize that it's about humanity's relationship with the living world, how we meet our needs within the means of this extraordinary planet. I do not think that current economics degrees are fit for purpose. When I look at the textbooks that today's students are taught from, it makes me actually really angry, because the core ideas in those textbooks were first drawn in the 1950s, and those were drawn from ideas from the 1850s and given 21st century challenges, from climate change to extreme inequality to financial crisis. It's an outrage that those passionate young people today who want to be part of changing the world and want to understand the world in order to set it on a better course are being taught ideas that are literally centuries out of date. I think it's outrageous, and it's what fires me up. So I wrote the book that I wish I could have read when I was a student, that would actually show me the latest ideas from feminist, ecological, complexity, behavioral, institutional economics, bring them together to start creating an economic mindset that would give us even half a chance of meeting the needs of all within the means of the planet. If you're calling for pluralism, it's a reaction clearly against a monoculture. And that monoculture was, let's say, neoclassical economic thinking. It's absolutely right that students should not merely be taught that as if that was all there was to know. We need to see the full history, but also the diversity of economic thought. So I think it's absolutely right that we put pluralism at the heart of an economics degree and give students the critical thinking skills and give them the credit that they will have the nous to be able to choose between those theories and know which ones they believe are grounded in reality, are grounded in their values, and are going to be useful. Beyond student education, though, I think we've got to go beyond pluralism, because if we just have fragmented disciplines, you're a feminist, I'm the behavioral economist, the complexity economist, all off in their own little silos, going to different conferences, writing for different journals, that will be a beautiful critique of the monoculture that is neoclassical economics. So being plural isn't enough. We need to create a new synthesis and a new vision that becomes the main thing that is taught as in its full diversity, rather than always seen as a reaction to that neoclassical beginning. I think it does. I think these different schools of thought actually arose as critiques to the monoculture. So feminist economics actually is based in a rejection of the underlying assumptions of neoclassical economics that just rules out the unpaid care economy and gender relations. So instead of only having reactions, we need to bring them together and put those values center stage. So yes, we need that plural view, and the new narrative needs to respect the multiple perspectives. There's never going to be one narrative, right? But in the process of coming to a new paradigm, we need to keep telling stories and listening to the different ways that different people tell the story, and together we move forward to a new understanding of what we value, of the context we face, of how the world works, and therefore the kind of economic language and shared mindset that we can turn into policy. When I was a student at university studying economics, there was no option to study environmental economics. I was frustrated, but I think I suffered from that feeling that so many students feel when they go to university, which is, if I don't get something and I don't get why something's missing, it's probably because I don't get it. And I'm at university now, and I don't want to hold up the class, so I'll just put my hand down. And I think that's a really powerful moment where people put their hand down because they think it's obviously me who doesn't get it. Somehow we have to learn to overcome that. And I think that's the brilliant thing about the Rethinking Economics movement, which has happened, is students realise, oh, there's other people like me all over the world who also think this isn't right. Maybe it's not me. Maybe there's a movement of us who are challenging it. So it's incredibly important to be critical. And indeed, when we propose something new, to invite critique of it. One of my favourite things to do when I present is to say, I want to hear your challenges, I want to hear your critiques. That's where you learn the most, and that's where we start to take this forward, to see the inherent flaws. I'll just say also, one of the quotes that really guides me is from the statistician George Box. All models are wrong, but some are useful. So any model you see, whether it's written in equations or words or in pictures, it's wrong, because there's no such thing as the right model. There's nothing correct. But is it useful? Does it reflect the reality you think the world faces? Does it put priority on the issues that you think matter? Does it reflect the values you want to pursue? If it does, then it's useful, and be critical and ask what would make it more useful. That's the way I like to think about it, and always constructive critique, because if we endlessly sling at each other, criticizing in an aggressive way, people become defensive. Constructive critique, we can actually move something forward. When I was a student, frustrated by my degree, I walked away because 25 years ago there was no internet. I couldn't link up with other people who, like me, were frustrated and wanted to make change. The beauty of the student movement now, and Rethinking Economics and the wider student movement that it's part of, is that you find each other over the internet, and that you've had the courage, actually, in the light, I think, of the financial crisis, where everybody said, we think we need to rethink this, to turn that into a movement. And not let it die when that first generation of students left university. Because that's the danger, right? Students leave, professors endure. Guess who's going to win that one? To turn it into something with structure and persistence and character, I think it's brilliant. So every time I give a talk and a young person puts up their hand and says, what can I do? First thing I say is, well, join Rethinking Economics, or whichever is the movement in your country. Know that you're part of a community. Know that you're part of a movement. Because once we have a movement, we can start to go somewhere.